Okay, welcome to this deep dive.
Hello.
Today we are cracking open excerpts from a pretty classic historical text, William Boericke's Homeopathic Materia Medica. And we're focusing specifically on Aurelia Racemosa.
Right. And our mission really is to explore what this particular book, you know, from its specific time, tells us about this substance, which is also known as American spikenard.
Yeah.
We're basically looking at the symptom picture as Boericke presented it.
And, right away, just flipping through these pages, what jumps out is the heavy emphasis on, well, respiratory stuff.
Mhm.
This text primarily links Aurelia racemosa with asthmatic conditions and the coughs that go along with them. Feels like a central theme.
It absolutely is the core focus here. I mean, texts like this, Materia Medicis, they function as these detailed catalogs. They list symptoms traditionally associated with different substances in homeopathy. The goal is to build a really comprehensive picture.
A picture, right. And the details in this picture are often, well, incredibly specific. For Aurelia racemosa, you see symptoms like a cough that gets distinctly worse when lying down,
That's a big one.
or these descriptions of like drenching sweats during sleep and this extreme sensitivity to drafts, currents of air.
And that detail about the cough is particularly nuanced, isn't it? The text specifies it's a dry cough, often triggered specifically after the first sleep.
After the first sleep.
Yeah, frequently showing up around the middle of the night. That timing isn't accidental.
Mm.
In these texts, things like time of day, body position, they call them modalities, they're seen as crucial for finding the right remedy picture.
Okay, that makes sense. Because the asthma symptoms, they seem to mirror that nighttime pattern you mentioned, occurring when lying down at night, often with a spasmodic kind of cough.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, also worse after that first sleep. There's even this peculiar tickling sensation described like deep in the throat.
Yeah, right. And a feeling of constriction in the chest, almost like, something is struck there, a foreign body sensation.
Wow.
And beyond that main asthma and cough focus, the text lists other respiratory details too. There's mention of nasal obstruction, noted as being worse in the spring.
Oh, interesting seasonality.
Yeah, and hay fever symptoms,
Uh-huh.
characterized by just frequent sneezing, lots of it.
And that sneezing, it leads to a very particular nasal discharge, right? The description is quite graphic here. It says copious, watery, and excoriating, meaning it irritates the skin.
Right, raw making.
And it has this distinctly salty, acrid taste. It's kind of remarkable how fine-grained these observations get.
That level of specific sensory detail, it's really characteristic of how these symptom pictures are built up. But while respiratory issues are definitely prominent, the Materia Medica doesn't stop there.
Okay.
It also lists conditions that seem maybe unrelated at first glance, like diarrhea,
Yeah.
and specifically prolapse of the rectum. Yeah. And with that rectal symptom, it notes an aching feeling extending upwards. And interestingly, it's aggravated when lying on the side the person is currently resting on.
Worse on the side or lying on. That's another one of those really specific modalities then.
Precisely. The text also briefly includes some female symptoms linked to Aurelia, things like suppressed menstruation or a foul-smelling acrid leucorrhea
Euphoria, okay.
and suppressed lochia after childbirth, which is the normal discharge. But here it's suppressed and accompanied by tympanites, abdominal bloating.
And just circling back to timings for a sec, you mentioned the cough after first sleep. The text actually pins down a precise time. It notes symptoms, particularly the cough, as being worse specifically around 11 p.m.
11 p.m., that's very granular.
Very.
It is. And, typical for a Materia Medica, the source also includes elements like listing relationships. So other substances traditionally compared with Aurelia, like pectin or arsiod.
Right, comparisons.
And it suggests common dosage forms, tincture to third potency, things like that. Just referring to how the substance might be prepared or administered within that framework. These are standard entries, really, giving context.
Yeah.
But the core is always this detailed symptom profile.
So to wrap up what we've explored for you here, it's this specific, sometimes surprising, symptom profile, the one associated with Aurelia racemosa, just as it's laid out in Boericke's Materia Medica.
Exactly.
We've pulled out the characteristics that this particular historical source connects with this substance.
Right. It's really about understanding the picture presented by this text, not evaluating the whole system, but seeing the level of, observational detail it contains.
Precisely. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. When you look at this incredible level of detail, specific timings like 11 p.m. or after first sleep, the specific sensations like a salty, acrid taste, or those modalities like symptoms being worse on the side you're lying on, What does this whole approach to describing symptoms tell us about how remedies were traditionally matched to an individual's experience of illness back then in this historical context?
It's a very distinct way of cataloging disease, isn't it?
It really is something to think about.